My name is Beatrice Hale. I am 68 years old, a retired nurse who once spent decades working long nights in hospital wards. I held the hands of strangers through pain, stitched wounds, whispered to families that healing takes time. I built my life on service, on sacrifice, on the belief that if you gave enough love, it would return to you when you needed it most. I was wrong. Today I stand inside a villa filled with sunlight and glass, a villa I never imagined would be mine. The waves roll endlessly just beyond the balcony, the air smells of salt and freedom, and the marble floor is cool beneath my bare feet. This place is beauty. This place is power. But at my front door stands my son, Mark, with his wife Lydia, clutching a bouquet of roses as if flowers could mend betrayal. His voice trembles through the wood. He calls me Mom again, like the word alone can erase the night he pushed me into the rain. And here is the truth I need you to hear at once. My billionaire brother found me homeless, broken and forgotten after my own son kicked me out. He gave me a new life and said, with a steady hand on mine, "This beachfront villa and $10 million are yours now." Days later, Mark stood at my door, flowers in hand, rehearsed apologies on his tongue. But it was too late. My brother saw right through his lies, and so did I. If you are wondering how a mother could ever arrive at this place, how a woman who once carried her son in her arms could now watch him knock like a stranger, stay with me. I will take you back because the story behind this moment is not just about wealth or betrayal. It is about silence, memory, and the power of standing again when the world thinks you are finished. I remember the night clearly, the storm, the cold, the heavy sound of my suitcase thudding onto wet concrete. I remember Mark's eyes, sharp with contempt, as he said I was nothing but a burden. The door slammed, and with it 30 years of sacrifice seemed to vanish into the rain. I sat under a bridge, clutching the only thing I had left, a frayed handkerchief embroidered with the letter B that my late husband once gave me. I thought my life had ended. But here is what no one expects. Sometimes the moment you believe you have lost everything is the very moment you begin again. When my brother Benjamin appeared in the dark, when his hand reached out to mine, I realized that family is not always about who you raised. Sometimes it is about who refuses to let you disappear. And so, from that bridge to this villa, from being discarded to being restored, my story unfolded. A story of contracts disguised as care, of false apologies, of quiet battles fought not with shouting, but with evidence, truth, and dignity. A story that belongs not only to me, but to countless mothers who gave everything and were told they were too much, too old, or too unnecessary. Now, as Mark waits outside my villa with Lydia by his side, I feel no urge to open the door. I feel no need to shout or accuse. My silence is sharper than any blade. My brother stands in the kitchen behind me, his presence a wall of strength. He glances at me, and in his eyes I see understanding. He does not need to say a word. We both know this scene too well. We both know that flowers cannot mask greed, and sweet words cannot undo years of cruelty. This is not revenge in the way you might expect. There are no fireworks, no grand speeches. It is quieter, more precise. It is justice that comes like the tide, steady and undeniable. If you have ever been cast aside by those you loved most, if you have ever been told your worth had expired, then perhaps you understand the weight of this moment. Perhaps you too know that silence can be the most powerful answer of all. So stay with me. Walk with me through the storm, through the courtroom, through the moments when my son and his wife tried to dress greed as concern. Stay with me as I show you how I learned to draw the line, not in anger, but in clarity. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone. And what I chose to do, what I chose not to do, changed everything. Now, if you are still listening, Take this as an invitation. Sit with me in this villa by the sea. Hear the knocking at the door, steady, insistent. See the roses trembling in Mark's hand. Ask yourself the question I ask every time I hear his voice. Would you open the door? Or would you let silence speak for you? The sound of my son's voice that night will never leave me. It cut through the walls of the home I once built with my own hands, through the memories that clung to every frame, and it pierced straight into me. "You are nothing but a burden," Mark shouted, his eyes sharp with disgust. Then the suitcase, heavy with all that remained of my life, was hurled down the front steps. I heard the thud of it hitting wet concrete just as the rain began to fall harder. The slam of the door followed, a sound more final than any word could ever be. I stood there for a moment in the storm, frozen. Water soaked through my sweater, clung to my hair, ran down my face until I could not tell where the rain ended and my shame began. The porch light flickered behind the glass, but no hand reached to open the door. No voice softened the blow. My son, the boy I had once rocked to sleep during fevers, the child for whom I had gone hungry so he could eat, had cast me out as though I were nothing but an old piece of furniture left by the curb. My mind would not stop replaying those words. A burden. I remembered nights in our small kitchen when I pretended I was not hungry, sliding my portion onto his plate, whispering, "I am fine," while my stomach ached. I remembered walking miles to a clinic in the middle of the night when his fever would not break, clutching him to my chest, praying he would survive. And now, all that sacrifice, all those years of devotion were rewritten by one cruel declaration. I reached for my suitcase, the handle slick with rain. My fingers shook as I lifted it, but I forced myself to move, step by step, down the street. Each footfall echoed like a drumbeat of abandonment. The neighborhood was quiet, the windows closed, the curtains drawn. I could have screamed for help, but who would have listened? In that moment, I understood something I had only glimpsed before. The world has little room for old women who no longer serve a purpose in someone else's story. By the time I reached the end of the block, the rain was coming down in sheets. My slippers squished with every step, pulling me deeper into exhaustion. The night air smelled of wet asphalt and loneliness. My body ached, but worse was the heaviness in my chest, the crushing realization that I had been erased from the home I had once fought so hard to keep alive. I stumbled beneath an overpass, the concrete walls dripping with water, graffiti scrawled across them like silent accusations. I slid down against the cold stone and pulled my suitcase close, using it as a makeshift seat. My breath came out in shivers. I reached inside the bag, fumbling past folded clothes until my hand closed around something soft and familiar. I pulled out the handkerchief, frayed at the edges, embroidered with a single letter B. My late husband had given it to me years ago, a small token of love I had kept all this time. That handkerchief became my anchor. I pressed it against my face, felt the worn threads against my cheek, and let myself breathe. It was proof that once I was cherished, that once I was not invisible. But now, sitting under that bridge, I felt like a ghost. People passed by above, their footsteps echoing, their conversations floating down like faint music. No one looked for me. No one stopped. To them, I was just another nameless figure in the shadows, a woman whose story had already ended. The night stretched on endlessly. Cars rushed past, their tires spraying water onto the road. I listened to the rhythm of it, trying to keep my mind from splintering. Every so often, my son's voice would return, sharp and cold. "Burden!" The word gnawed at me, hollowed me out. I wrapped the handkerchief tighter around my palm, whispering to myself, "I am still here." As the hours passed, the dampness seeped into my bones. My legs cramped, my shoulders stiffened. I wanted to sleep, but fear kept my eyes open. I thought about what might happen if I closed them, if someone worse than loneliness found me there. My heart pounded, and I wished for a shield, a shelter, a reminder that I was still worthy of protection. But the only protection I had was silence and the memory of who I used to be. At some point past midnight, the rain slowed. The city hummed above me, indifferent. I realized that I had become invisible not just to strangers, but to the very blood of my body, to the son I had once believed would never abandon me. That thought was more cutting than the wind. Still, I sat there, clutching my suitcase and my handkerchief, determined not to disappear entirely. Even as shame and exhaustion pressed against me, I whispered again into the darkness, "I am still here." And though I did not know it then, that whisper would be the thread that carried me forward, from the bridge to the villa, from despair to a quiet kind of justice. But that night, all I had was rain, silence, and the echo of a slammed door. The rain had slowed, but the night air was still heavy with dampness. I sat curled against the concrete wall beneath the bridge, clutching the handkerchief with the letter B stitched into its corner, when I saw the sudden beam of headlights sweeping across the dark. A black car slowed near the curb above me. My first thought was fear. Strangers in the night seldom brought safety. The car door opened and a tall figure stepped out. He wore a long coat, the kind that belonged to a man accustomed to command. For a second, I thought I was dreaming, because the face that leaned down toward me was one I had not seen in 20 years. My brother, Benjamin. His hair had silvered at the edges, but his eyes were unchanged, sharp, assessing, and full of fire. We had once been inseparable. As children, we built forts from blankets. We whispered secrets no one else would ever know. But life, with all its choices, had pulled us apart. I had chosen sacrifice. I married young, loved deeply, and poured myself into raising Mark. I worked double shifts at the clinic, scrubbing floors when the money ran out, skipping meals so my son would never feel hunger. My life became a circle of duty, of giving without pause. Benjamin had chosen another road. He was brilliant, ambitious, ruthless when he needed to be. He built empires in boardrooms, closed deals across oceans, and wore the armor of success. To me, he seemed untouchable, as if wealth itself bent to his will. Somewhere along that path, our closeness cracked. I told myself I did not need him, that my quiet life of service was enough. He told himself I had chosen smallness, that I had abandoned him for the family life he could never understand. And so we drifted, two branches from the same tree, growing in different directions. And yet, here he was, standing in the rain, kneeling in front of me like no time had passed. He did not speak at first. He simply reached out, his hand steady, his eyes locking onto mine. For a long moment, the city sounds faded. The traffic above us was a distant hum. The drizzle softened into silence. I looked at his hand, at the strength it carried, and I realized that this was not just help. This was a bridge back to something I thought I had lost forever. My hand trembled as I placed it into his. The warmth startled me. I had been cold for so long I had forgotten what it felt like to be held without judgment. His fingers closed firmly, as if he would not let me slip away this time. That single touch was rescue. That single gesture said everything words could not. Benjamin lifted me to my feet, my suitcase in his other hand as if it weighed nothing. He opened the car door and guided me inside. The heater roared to life, enveloping me in a cocoon of warmth. For the first time in weeks, my body stopped shivering. I clutched the handkerchief in my lap, staring at him through the dim light of the dashboard. He looked older, yes, but also unbroken, carved from determination itself. Neither of us spoke as the car moved through the city. The quiet between us was not empty. It was full of all the words we had left unsaid for 20 years. I thought about the fights we never resolved, the birthdays missed, the years wasted in pride. Yet he was here now, and that was enough. We arrived at a hotel just before dawn. He led me through the lobby, past curious eyes that lingered on my damp clothes, my bedraggled state. At the desk, he spoke with calm authority, arranging everything with a sweep of his credit card and a few clipped sentences. Soon I was standing inside a room that smelled of clean sheets and lemon polish. He placed my suitcase by the bed and turned to me. For the first time since finding me, his voice filled the space. "Tomorrow," he said simply, "you will have a new home." I wanted to protest, to tell him I needed nothing more than this small mercy, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I nodded. The truth was, I did not know how to live without giving. I did not know how to accept such generosity without guilt. But Benjamin's tone left no room for argument. His promise was final, unshakable. That night, wrapped in a hotel blanket, I lay awake listening to the hum of the air conditioner. My body was warm, my stomach full for the first time in days, but my mind spun in disbelief. "Tomorrow," he had said, "tomorrow I would have a new home." As sleep finally pulled me under, I held the handkerchief close and whispered to myself, "Perhaps my story is not over yet." Morning sunlight poured through the wide windows of the hotel room, waking me gently. For a moment, I forgot where I was. I reached for the familiar creak of my old house, the sound of Mark clattering dishes in the kitchen, the rhythm of my life before it had been torn away. But then I opened my eyes and remembered that life was gone. I was no longer welcome in the house I had once built with love. Benjamin arrived just after breakfast, as crisp and decisive as ever. He didn't waste words. "Come," he said, and I followed him out to the waiting car. My body was still stiff from days on the street, but I kept pace. Something in his stride told me that my life was about to change again. We drove along the Florida coast, the morning sun shimmering across the water. My heart thudded as we approached a gated community. A guard nodded as the iron gate swung open. I pressed my hand against the window, my mind racing. This was not the kind of place where women like me lived. This was a world for the wealthy, for those who had never worried about skipping meals or choosing between medicine and groceries. The car stopped in front of a cream-colored villa with blue-tiled roofing. It looked like it had been pulled from a postcard. Benjamin stepped out, opened my door, and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a set of keys, heavy and gleaming in my palm. "This," he said, his voice firm but calm, "is your home now." I stared at him, unable to form words. My fingers clutched the keys as though they might vanish if I loosened my grip. "Benjamin, this can't be real." He didn't answer. Instead, he led me up the steps, pushed open the front door, and guided me inside. The villa was filled with light. The walls were painted a soft beige, the floors a cool gray stone. A kitchen with granite counters stretched out to one side, while a living room opened onto glass doors that looked toward the ocean. The air smelled of fresh paint and lemon polish. It felt too clean, too new, too far from the bridge where I had sat just nights ago. Benjamin placed a folder on the counter. Inside was a bank statement. I saw the number, $10 million, sitting in an account under my name. My breath caught. The room swayed for a moment. I whispered, "From a woman with nothing to this. How could I possibly deserve it?" The question tumbled from me before I could stop it. Guilt, disbelief, shame, all of it collided inside. I had spent my life giving, never keeping. I had spent years shrinking so others could grow. To suddenly hold this wealth, this power, felt impossible. My hands shook. Benjamin looked at me with the kind of steady focus that had built his empire. "You are asking the wrong question," he said. "It isn't about deserving, it is about worth. And you, Beatrice, are worth more than any figure on a page. You gave your son your health, your youth, your love. He discarded you. That does not erase your value. You are more deserving than anyone I know." Tears pressed at my eyes, but I held them back. His words struck a place deep inside me, a place I had buried long ago. For years, I had convinced myself I was useful only when I was needed, when I cooked, when I cleaned, when I carried others through storms. But standing here, keys in one hand, $10 million in the other, I realized I had never been given permission to own anything for myself. Benjamin rested a hand lightly on my shoulder. "This is not charity," he said softly. "This is restoration." I nodded slowly, still unable to speak. I moved through the villa in silence, letting my fingers trail along the smooth counters, the cool stone walls. I stopped at the sliding glass doors and opened them. The balcony stretched wide, overlooking the endless blue of the Gulf. Waves rolled steady and sure, crashing against the sand. I stepped forward, the warm breeze brushing against my face, lifting my hair. I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply. For the first time in years, I felt space belonged to me, not borrowed, not conditional, not dependent on someone else's mercy, mine. The balcony beneath my feet, the ocean stretched before me, the villa behind me, all of it was under my name. I clutched the embroidered handkerchief in my pocket, the one with the letter B. For so long, it had been the only proof that I once belonged somewhere. Now, it was no longer just a reminder of the past. It was a witness to the present. I whispered into the wind, "I am not invisible. Not anymore." The ocean answered with its steady rhythm, like applause for a truth I had nearly forgotten. The first week in the villa felt unreal. Light poured through every room. I tried to learn the sound of safety, to let my shoulders drop, to believe a key in my pocket meant I belonged. I made tea and kept the handkerchief with the letter B in my apron like a flag of survival. That afternoon, a shadow slid across the frosted glass by the doorbell. The chime rang. My heart stumbled. When I opened the door, Mark stood there with Lydia half a step behind him. He wore a crisp button-down. She held a bouquet of red roses. His smile arrived before his eyes. "Hi, Mom," he said. "We came to see how you are." I did not move. The sea wind pressed my spine. Lydia lifted the roses. "These are for you. We wanted to visit sooner, but we needed time to reflect." Her tone slid between apology and performance. Mark added, "Family matters more than pride. We made mistakes. We want to fix this. Start fresh." Family. The word flickered like an old bulb. I remembered the night rain swallowed my name and he called me a burden. The sandwiches cut into triangles, the report cards on the fridge, the fevers I rocked out of him. I steadied myself with the door frame and kept my mouth closed. Benjamin stepped from the kitchen, sleeves rolled, calm as a judge. He studied their faces, then said, "Let us save time. Do not perform. We have seen enough." "I'm trying to apologize," Mark said. "Can a man not visit his mother without a tribunal forming in the foyer?" Silence settled on my tongue like a choice. Lydia gestured toward the living room. "Maybe we can sit. Talk like adults. We are family. Forgiveness is healing." Benjamin folded his arms. "Forgiveness is not access," he answered. Mark tried a different key. "Mom, I know I said awful things. I was under pressure. The business was failing. Lydia's mother was sick, the mortgage. Everything collapsed at once. I panicked. Please, can we talk numbers, logistics, at least keep communication open?" Numbers and logistics. There was the shape of his need. My mind split into two rooms. In one, the boy asleep in the car seat with crumbs on his cheeks. In the other, the man who pushed my suitcase into the rain. Between them stood the woman I had become, barefoot on a tile floor that finally belonged to her. If I opened the door wider, the rooms would merge into the same duties, the same erasure. I lifted the roses from Lydia and felt their weight. The thorns had been trimmed, risk removed, beauty curated. I set them on the console table and smoothed the ribbon with my thumb. "Thank you," I said, neutral as steam. I did not move aside. Lydia's smile tightened. "We can help with errands, appointments, paperwork." Benjamin's gaze did not waver. "What you want is the code that opens the life you forfeited," he said. "You are poisoning her against us," Mark snapped. "She can see on her own," Benjamin replied. A tremor went through me. I am a mother, I thought. I am also a person. Could I love the child I raised and still close the door on the man he had become? The moral weight pressed down. In the clinic, I taught families that boundaries save lives. Why had mine taken so long to arrive? Mark stepped closer. "One conversation. That is all I ask." Lydia added, "We found a counselor. We can meet. We can heal." She reached for my hand. I kept my hands at my sides. My silence stretched until it touched each wall. Benjamin ended it. "This visit is over," he said. "If you have something to say, put it in writing. Our counsel will review it." He guided the door a few inches forward. Mark's eyes jolted wide. "Mom," he said, softer now, "please." The word slid through me and rattled a memory loose, a preschool drop-off, a small voice asking me not to leave. I tasted salt and made a different choice. "I hear that you are sorry," I said. "I am still healing. I will not discuss finances. I will not reopen the past today." I nodded once. A small bow to the ghosts gathered between us. "Take care of yourselves." The door closed with a sound that did not break me. The roses waited on the table like a test I had passed. Benjamin exhaled. The sky brightened. My resolve finally matched it. I pressed the handkerchief in my pocket and felt the stitched letter B anchor me to the floor. I am a mother. I am also a person. I repeated it, steady as breath, while the sea kept time. It was a Tuesday afternoon, warm and bright, when the knock came. I expected the delivery man or a neighbor, but when I opened the door, a man in a charcoal suit stood on the threshold. He carried a leather briefcase and wore a smile too polished to be sincere. "Mrs. Hale," he said smoothly, "I represent a firm that specializes in elder care. Your family reached out to us with concerns. They want to ensure your future is safe and secure." My stomach tightened, but I said nothing. He opened the briefcase, produced a stack of papers, and slid them onto my dining table as though the villa belonged to him. "This is a standard care agreement. Nothing to worry about, just signatures to formalize protection." I sat down slowly, keeping my handkerchief folded in my pocket, my anchor of steadiness. I picked up the first page. The font was small, the legal language thick, but my years of handling medical forms in the clinic had trained my eyes. I scanned, carefully, line by line. There it was, buried in the middle. Temporary guardianship, a clause that granted my son Mark full authority over financial decisions, including accounts, property, and medical consent. If I signed, the villa keys in my hand would no longer matter. My life would return to being managed, not lived. I placed the contract back on the table. My voice was calm, steady. "The elderly may be slow, sir," I said, meeting his gaze, "but we are not stupid." His smile faltered. "This is for your benefit. Your son only wants to ensure you don't face unnecessary risks." I leaned forward, lowering my tone to match his. "My son already made his decision the night he called me a burden. If he is so concerned now, he can look me in the eye. You may leave." He blinked, as though surprised to find resistance. But before he could collect the papers, another knock came at the door. Benjamin entered with a woman I had not met before, tall, composed, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "This is Harper," Benjamin said, placing a hand briefly on my shoulder. "My attorney." Harper walked straight to the table, flipping through the documents with brisk efficiency. She tapped the damning clause with one finger. "Classic guardianship trap," she muttered. "I've seen this language before. Too vague to look dangerous, too specific to be harmless." She closed the folder with a snap. "Mrs. Hale, do not sign anything like this." The suited man cleared his throat. "It's a misunderstanding. Her family, Harper cut in, is already preparing a petition for conservatorship. They're drafting a case that she is no longer mentally competent. This contract was meant to be Exhibit A." My breath caught. The word stung more than the storm rain ever had. Conservatorship. My own son attempting to declare me incapable, to erase my voice with ink and procedure. Benjamin's jaw tightened, but his expression remained composed. "We anticipated this," he said. "That's why Harper is here." The lawyer in the suit tried to gather his papers, but Harper blocked him. "These are copies," she said coolly. "We'll keep them. You can explain to your clients why their scheme has already failed." He hesitated, then left with a stiff nod, his polished shoes clicking across the tile. The door shut behind him, leaving only the sound of waves beyond the balcony. I sank back into my chair, my fingers pressed against the embroidered letter B in my pocket. Mentally incompetent. Was that truly how Mark saw me now? I thought of the years I managed clinic budgets down to the last cent, the meals stretched through recessions, the careful planning that had held our family together when Charles was still alive. And now my son wanted to paint me as unstable, all so he could hold the pen to my name. Harper's voice broke through my spiral. "Mrs. Hale, you are sharper than most clients I've ever worked with. But your son and his wife will not stop here. They will try again, and next time they'll disguise it better." Benjamin poured me a glass of water and set it in front of me. His presence was a steady wall. "Let them try," he said. "We will meet every strike with evidence, and we will not bend." I lifted the glass, my hand trembling slightly, and took a sip. The cool water steadied me. "Thank you," I whispered. But inside, the conflict burned hotter. I was a mother before I was anything else. Could I really face my own child in a courtroom? Could I watch him stand against me and not crumble? The sea wind carried through the open balcony door. I stood, walking toward it, the contract still on the table behind me. My eyes scanned the horizon. I whispered, too softly for anyone else to hear. How does a mother defend herself against her son? The ocean, steady and endless, offered no answer. Only the promise that I was not yet defeated. The next morning, the resolve I whispered to the ocean met its first test. My phone buzzed. A bank alert flashed. Someone had requested to change the mailing address and primary phone on my largest account. A PDF attachment displayed my name in cursive. At a glance, it looked like me. My bones knew better. I had not signed anything. Benjamin stepped beside me. He tapped the link. The dashboard showed a red banner that read, "Pending Profile Update. Verify immediately." He set the mug down, voice calm. "This is why we put alerts on every line." Within an hour, Harper arrived, binder under her arm. We gathered at the kitchen island while the Gulf lit the floor. She opened the PDF, zoomed in on the scrawl. "Your capital B is open. This loop is closed. Your last stroke falls. This one rises. It is a forgery." Cold slid through me. "They want the mail," I said. "If they control the mail, they control the paper." "Change of address is the first lever," Harper replied. "Then a replacement card, then a verification call, then a power of attorney pushed under urgency. We block it here." She called the bank's fraud desk. Benjamin confirmed voice security. The pending change was canceled, an internal hold placed, and a case number issued. I stared at the signature. It stared back like a mask. I pressed my husband's handkerchief into my palm and felt the stitched B. The cloth was imperfect, therefore honest. A sentence formed. "They do not want me. They want money." Harper's phone buzzed. She scanned the screen, then angled it toward us. Monitoring picked up an outbound email from Lydia's personal address to a boutique practice called Leland & Cobb. Subject, POA template and mobile notary. She attached a draft. Metadata shows it was edited on Mark's laptop at 1:13 a.m. Benjamin exhaled. They do their ugliest work at night. We printed the email and preserved the metadata report. Harper looped in an investigator who watches intake lines. By afternoon, he forwarded a voicemail captured from the firm's number. Lydia's voice filled the kitchen, cheerful. She asked for a clean elder care package that would let an adult child step in fast. Banking access, medical authorization, friendly tone. She spelled my name. Heat rose in my face. She sounds like she is ordering flowers, I said. Not flowers, Benjamin answered. A key. The bank sent logs for the attempted update. The request originated from an IP assigned to Mark's insurance office. The signature certificate came from a cut-rate signing service. The file name included my initials and the word profile, as if renaming me could make me easier to move. Harper assembled everything into a clear binder. Emails, headers, IP logs, the forged PDF. She slid a page toward me. Write a brief statement. Your words. I wrote that I was competent, that I had not authorized any change, that all communications must go through counsel. She filmed me reading it, date and time visible on the stove clock. My voice trembled on the first line, steadied on second. When she left to file affidavits, quiet returned. I rinsed cups. The ocean kept time beyond the glass. I tried to let memory defend my son, the toddler with milk on his chin, the schoolboy who swore his blanket had magic. None of those images could lift the weight of the forged curl on that PDF. The boy I raised would not sign the woman I am out of myself. Benjamin returned from a call and laid a legal pad on the counter. Next steps: freeze beneficiary changes, require in-person verification, prepare for an injunction, he said. I placed the handkerchief on the pad and nodded. For years, I mistook love for surrender. Now I know the difference. At sunset, the bank confirmed new controls. Outbound beneficiary edits were frozen. My profile required in-branch identification. No phone or mail changes without a live visit. A fraud flag would alert Harper the second anything shifted. Before bed, I walked the rooms, touching door frames, counting breaths. This villa was not just shelter. It was proof I owned my name. I folded the handkerchief and tucked it under my pillow. The binder waited on the table. Evidence is not love. It is protection. Love is the decision to stand anyway. In the morning, Harper texted again. The investigator traced the editing device to Mark's office lease. The timestamp aligned with the IP logs. She added, next stop, court, temporary injunction. I looked at the water and repeated my compass. They do not want me. They want money. I did not say it with bitterness. I said it with clarity, the kind that keeps a mother upright when the tide comes in. The villa glowed softly with lamplight, the hum of the ocean steady beyond the balcony doors. I had just poured myself tea when the knock rattled against the evening quiet. My pulse quickened. I was not expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Mark and Lydia stood together, a bottle of red wine in his hand, a bakery box in hers. Surprise, Lydia said brightly. We thought maybe dinner together would be nice, like old times. The words felt rehearsed, as though she had practiced them in the mirror. Mark added quickly, just a family evening, Mom, nothing serious. His smile was stretched too wide. Against my better judgment, I let them step inside. The villa was warm, but the air grew heavy the moment they entered. We sat around the dining table. Lydia unpacked the food, pasta, garlic bread, salad in a plastic tub, chattering about nothing, as though the storm between us had never existed. Mark poured the wine, his hand steady, his gaze shifting too often to the briefcase at his side. I pushed food around my plate. Every bite tasted of tension. The conversation circled meaningless topics: weather, neighbors, Lydia's new recipe. Not once did they mention the forged signature, the emails, the betrayal. Instead, they spoke as though forgiveness were already granted, as though the past weeks could be painted over with sauce and polite laughter. Finally, the silence broke. Mark leaned back, sipping wine, then set the glass down. He reached into his case and pulled out a neat stack of papers. He placed it on the table in front of me with a measured calm. "Mom," he said softly, "this is something we wanted you to review." Nothing complicated, just a medical agreement, standard procedure. For emergencies, it ensures we can step in if you ever need help. The room tilted. My hands tightened on the edge of the table as I pulled the packet closer. I scanned the first page. The title read, Family Health and Support Agreement. The language at first glance seemed harmless: coordination, assistance, care. But buried halfway down was the truth: durable power of attorney, granting Mark full authority over my medical and financial decisions. If I signed, every choice I made, every dollar, every treatment would belong to him. I lifted my eyes slowly. "A medical agreement?" I asked, my voice steady. Lydia nodded quickly. "Yes, just a precaution. Families do this all the time. It's about trust." Trust. The word curdled in my stomach. I remembered the rain pounding on my back, the slam of a door, the suitcase thrown into the night. I remembered the forged signature, the email to a boutique firm, the call Lydia placed as if she were ordering lunch. My son's smile now was the same one he wore when he lied about finishing his homework as a boy. Only this time, the stakes were my life. I picked up the pen that lay beside the contract. My hand trembled, not with weakness, but with clarity. I looked at Mark, then at Lydia. For a long moment, I let the silence fill the villa. Their eyes followed the pen as if the ink it carried was gold. Then, with one motion, I set the pen down and lifted the contract. I tore it slowly, the rip echoing louder than any shout. Page by page, I split it in half until the pieces lay scattered across the table, like broken promises. My voice, low and certain, carried through the room. "Do not mistake silence for weakness." The words hung heavy. Lydia's smile collapsed. Mark's face flushed, his jaw tightening. "Mom," he began, but I raised my hand. "No," I said firmly. "You threw me into the storm and called me a burden. You forged my name and tried to steal my voice. And now you want me to surrender what little dignity remains? Not tonight. Not ever." Mark pushed back his chair sharply, his anger barely veiled. Lydia touched his arm, whispering something, but he shook her off. For a moment, he looked at me, not as a son looks at a mother, but as a man denied property he thought already his. That look chilled me more than the rain under the bridge. Benjamin entered then, his footsteps calm, his gaze fixed on the shredded contract. He stood behind me, his hand steady on my shoulder. "You heard her," he said quietly. "This ends now. No more visits without counsel. No more games." Mark glared, but he gathered his briefcase. Lydia scooped the torn pages, her hands shaking. Without another word, they left. The door shut with a final thud, and silence reclaimed the villa. I sat still, staring at the empty plates, the torn paper. My chest ached with both sorrow and release. Inside me, the conflict twisted. Could a mother ever truly cut her son away? Yet the truth was clear. They no longer wanted me. They wanted control. They wanted money. I folded the handkerchief in my lap, pressing the stitched letter B between my fingers. My voice whispered only to myself, "I am not weak. I am still here." The ocean answered in its steady rhythm, stronger than any false promise. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and nerves. I sat on a hard bench near the front, Benjamin on my right, Harper on my left, the handkerchief folded in my palm. I told myself it was just another building, just another room, but my heart hammered as though the walls themselves were judging me. When the bailiff called the case, Mark and Lydia rose across the aisle. Mark wore a dark suit, his tie knotted perfectly, but his face was pale. Lydia clutched a folder, eyes darting nervously. They looked like a couple stepping into a play, each line rehearsed, each gesture carefully chosen. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, adjusted her glasses. This hearing is to determine whether the petition for guardianship of Mrs. Beatrice Hale shall proceed. Counsel, you may begin. Mark's attorney stepped forward, smoothing his jacket. Your Honor, my client only seeks to protect his mother. Mrs. Hale has shown erratic behavior, inconsistent judgment, and may be vulnerable to exploitation. He requests legal guardianship to ensure her safety and proper management of her affairs. Then Mark himself took the stand. He looked at me once, then lowered his gaze, his voice breaking with practiced sorrow. She is not the same, Your Honor. My mom forgets things. She confuses dates. She thinks people are against her. She even tore up documents that would have helped her. His eyes filled with tears, his tone dripping with filial concern. I love her. I just want to protect her. Please. She is not capable anymore. Every word cut deep, not because they were true, but because they came from the boy I once cradled through fevers and nightmares. The courtroom blurred for a moment, but I steadied myself with the handkerchief. I breathed in, then out, and waited. When it was Harper's turn, she rose with calm precision. She placed a binder on the evidence table, her voice level. Your Honor, the claim of incompetence is a fabrication. We have evidence that Mr. Hale and his wife have attempted to manipulate and defraud Mrs. Hale in order to seize control of her assets. She pressed a button on a small recorder. Lydia's cheerful voice filled the room. Yes, we need a clean elder care package. Banking access, medical authorization. It has to look urgent. Gasps rippled through the benches. Harper continued. Here are emails from Lydia to a law firm, attaching drafts of guardianship clauses. Here is a forged signature on a bank request. Trace back to Mark's office computer. Here is metadata proving the forgery was created at 1:13 in the morning. She flipped page after page, each one a nail hammered into their case. The judge's brow furrowed deeper with every exhibit. Mark shifted in his chair, his tears drying to ash. Lydia bent her head, avoiding the gaze of everyone in the room. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, walking to the witness chair. The oath felt heavy, but I spoke it clearly. When I faced the judge, my voice was not broken, not timid. It was steady, worn, but unshaken. Your Honor, I began, I may be 68. My hands tremble when I hold a pen too long. I forget where I place my glasses sometimes, but I remember every scar my life has carved into me. I remember the rain the night my son threw me out. I remember the bridge where I tried to disappear. And I remember the morning my brother placed keys in my hand and told me I was worth more than shame. I lifted my chin. I am not incompetent. I am alive, alert, and sharper than ever. I see what has been done to me, and I will not be erased. Age does not mean absence of mind. If anything, it means I know more than I wish I did. I am more lucid now than at any other time because I understand the value of what is mine, my voice, my memory, my dignity. Silence filled the room when I stopped. The judge looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. The petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, due to substantial evidence of fraud, forgery, and misrepresentation, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation. This court will not be used as a weapon against the competent. The gavel struck, sharp as thunder. The decision was final. I turned my head. Mark sat frozen, his face drained of all color. Lydia's eyes fell to the floor, her shoulders collapsing inward. No words came from them. None could. Benjamin placed a hand over mine. Harper gathered the binder, and together we rose. My legs trembled as I walked out of that courtroom, but my heart felt steady for the first time in years. I had not screamed, I had not cursed. I had simply stood and spoken the truth, and the truth, at last, had spoken back. Outside, the autumn air was crisp, sharp with the scent of rain. I breathed it deep, the handkerchief still folded in my palm. I whispered to myself, "I'm still here." The courthouse steps felt steeper on the way down, the air cooler, my lungs free. We drove home without music. When the villa's gate opened, something unclenched inside me. This time, the key in my hand was not a wish, it was proof. I set water to boil and washed my face and carried my journal to the balcony. The horizon wore a silver line. I opened to a fresh page and wrote, so my hand could keep pace with my heart. The day my son threw me out, I thought my life had ended. It was only the beginning. Benjamin came out with 2 mugs and sat beside me. He did not speak. He did not need to. His silence held like a railing, something to grip while the ground learned my name again. I pressed the handkerchief with the letter B into the crease of the book and felt the threads anchor me. "You do not have to be brave today," he said. "I am not sure bravery is what this is," I answered. "Maybe it is consent. I consent to being alive after all." He nodded once, eyes on the surf. We drank tea until the steam disappeared. When he rose, he placed a business card beside my journal. "Call her when you're ready," he said. Her name was Mira Santos, director of the Harbor Light Fund, a non-profit Benjamin had supported. Their mission was plain and fierce: protect and empower older women who had been discarded by family or circumstance. I dialed, half expecting a gatekeeper. Instead, Mira picked up on the second ring, her voice precise. "We do not rescue," she said after I introduced myself. "We restore. Will you come by tomorrow?" The office sat on the second floor near the marina. Sunlight pooled on wooden floors, the scent of coffee mixed with salt air. Mira walked me through their work: legal clinics on Saturdays, emergency housing, a twice-monthly skills circle, budget literacy, boundary setting, how to hold a line without apology. "This is not about charity," Mira said. "It is about mirrors. People forget who they are. We hold the glass until they remember." She asked what I wanted, not what I could endure. No one had asked me that in years. I heard my answer before I knew I was speaking. A program for women starting over after 60, practical things with dignity built in, a place where needing help does not feel like begging. Mira smiled. "Then you will design it with us." By week's end, I was at a long table with 3 staff members and 2 volunteers. We named the program Second Morning, a nod to waking safe after a night you thought would not end. I drafted intake questions, not just dates and numbers, but the map of a person, skills ignored, dreams buried under duty. We partnered with a clinic for wellness checks. Harper agreed to teach a session on predatory contracts. Benjamin pledged a matching fund for microgrants. At night, I returned to the villa and wrote in my journal. The entries grew steadier. The day my son tried to turn the law into a knife, I did not bleed. The day the judge called my name competent, my breath returned. I did not write with triumph. I wrote with temperature, measuring the cool return of clarity. One afternoon, Mira introduced me to a woman named Ruthie who had just left a bad situation. She wore a thrift store blazer and held herself like a question. While she waited for paperwork, I made tea. We sat in the small courtyard behind the office. She glanced at my hands. "How did you stop shaking?" she asked. "I did not stop," I said. "I learned to carry the cup anyway." She laughed once. I pressed my handkerchief between my palms and felt the stitch steady me. At home, Benjamin read quietly while I assembled binders for Second Morning. He looked up and met my eyes. Gratitude passed between us without language. Power can be loud. His version arrived as permission to be whole. That night I stood on the balcony and said my sentence aloud again. The day my son threw me out, I thought my life had ended. It was only the beginning. The tide moved in slow muscles. The villa lights hummed. I closed my journal and turned off the lamp. Tomorrow we would open the doors of the program for the first time. I slid the key into the lock and felt the metal turn. Ownership is not the same as possession. Ownership is a vow. Mine was simple. I will not vanish. I will make a table long enough for every woman who thought she had to eat, standing in the kitchen. The morning light poured through the wide windows of the Harbor Light Fun Center, gentle and golden, like mercy made visible. The day was already alive with movement. Volunteers arranging chairs, women gathering in small circles, laughter mixing with the scrape of coffee cups. I sat at the registration table with my journal beside me, ready to greet whoever walked through the door. That was when I saw her. A thin woman stepped hesitantly into the lobby, her clothes damp from the drizzle outside, her hair matted from sleep that had clearly been taken on the streets. She clutched a plastic grocery bag to her chest, as though it contained her entire life. Her eyes flickered from face to face, wary, uncertain, but also desperate. For a long moment, the room disappeared around me. She could have been me. 2 months earlier, under the bridge, cold and forgotten. I felt the old ache return, the sting of being invisible, the humiliation of needing but not asking. My hand drifted to the pocket of my cardigan where the embroidered handkerchief rested, the letter B worn soft by years. I stood and walked toward her. She froze, like a startled bird, until I smiled. "Welcome," I said softly. "You're safe here. Come sit. Warm yourself." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. I guided her to a chair, poured her tea, placed a sandwich in front of her. She held the cup as though it might vanish. Watching her sip, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. The volunteers carried on around us, the program unfolding. A class began in the adjoining room, women discussing budgeting, resilience, and healing. Yet all I could see was this woman's reflection of my own past. She was the mirror that reminded me why I had survived. Later, when the center quieted, I returned to my desk. My journal lay open, waiting. I placed the handkerchief on the table, smoothing its folds. The stitched letter B glowed in the afternoon light. For years, I had carried it as a reminder of loss. My husband gone, my son estranged, my name treated like paper to be signed away. But now, setting it down, I felt no grief. I felt closure. I wrote slowly, letting each word anchor me. I did not vanish. I did not lose myself. I only began again. The sentence looked back at me, clear as the ocean horizon. Mira passed by, touching my shoulder lightly. "Good session today," she said. "That woman you welcomed." She smiled for the first time in weeks. I nodded, unable to speak. As I closed the journal, the echo of my own voice from the courtroom returned, the words that had once poured from me like fire. Do not mistake silence for weakness. They no longer sounded like defiance. They sounded like a truth carved into bone. That evening, I walked home from the center along the coastal path. The villa rose ahead, its windows glowing. Benjamin was on the balcony, his figure steady against the darkening sky. I lifted a hand in greeting, and though the distance was wide, he raised his cup as if to say, "You are exactly where you belong." Inside, I placed the handkerchief on my bedside table. Not tucked away, not hidden in a pocket, but out in the open, an emblem of survival transformed into sovereignty. I smiled, not because everything had healed, but because I had. Before sleeping, I whispered into the quiet, "Do not mistake silence for weakness." The words echoed not as a warning now, but as a benediction. I turned off the light, leaving the room filled with the soft sound of the ocean. For the first time in decades, I closed my eyes without fear of doors slamming or signatures forged. I closed them with the knowledge that I had been broken once, yes, But I had rebuilt, and I was whole, and tomorrow I would rise again. The beach was quiet except for the rhythm of the waves, rising and falling like the steady breath of the earth itself. I walked slowly along the shoreline, my bare feet sinking into the cool sand, the water curling over my toes before sliding back again. The sun was lowering, painting the horizon in shades of amber and rose, and my shadow stretched long across the beach like a companion I had finally made peace with. The villa sat behind me, glowing softly against the darkening sky. I turned once to look at it, the place where I had reclaimed not just a roof, but my dignity. Then I looked ahead to the endless ocean and whispered into the salt, heavy air. The day my son threw me out, I thought my life had ended, but it was only the beginning. Each step reminded me of that night under the bridge, the rain on my skin, the ache in my bones, the silence of being unseen. For a long time, I believed invisibility would be my final chapter, but now I knew better. If you have ever been cast aside, remember this: you are not invisible. You still hold the right to write the next chapter of your story. And sometimes, silence is the strongest answer of all. I stopped near a piece of driftwood, its surface polished smooth by years of tides. Sitting down, I pulled the embroidered handkerchief from my pocket, the one with the letter B, stitched by the hands of my late husband. For so long it had been a relic of grief, something I carried like proof of what I had lost. Tonight, I placed it gently on the sand beside me, not as a token of sorrow, but as a symbol of return. I smiled. I had found myself again. The waves rolled in and out, steady, eternal. Their persistence mirrored my own. I thought of the courtroom, of my son's trembling voice when his lies unraveled, of the judge's gavel striking like thunder, declaring me competent, declaring me whole. I thought of the women I had met through the foundation, faces once weary, now lit with the fragile flame of hope. Their courage reminded me that survival was never just about me. It was about creating a path wide enough for others to walk. I stood and brushed the sand from my hands, breathing deeply. The ocean air filled my lungs like medicine. In that moment, I felt no bitterness toward Mark or Lydia, only clarity. They had chosen deceit. I had chosen life. The contrast was enough. As I walked again, I thought of you, the listener, the witness to this journey. If you have lived through something similar, if betrayal or abandonment has ever darkened your door, what would you do? Would you forgive, or would you walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters. Every voice, even whispered, has weight. And before this story closes, I want to ask you something tender. Where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee, or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Let us know. We read every message with gratitude. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing. Not just to hear more stories like mine, but to join a community that believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time here today. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you carry this with you. Sometimes the miracle does not knock on your door. Sometimes it waits quietly until you are ready to open your heart. I paused at the edge of the surf, watching the waves break in foamy applause, and let my voice rise one final time. Do not mistake silence for weakness. The echo returned from within, not as a shield but as peace. Turning toward the villa, I walked slowly back, the tide at my heels, the sky ablaze with gold. My shadow stretched far ahead, long and certain. For the first time in decades, I knew my story was not ending here. It was only beginning again, with the strength of the ocean beside me and the promise that I would never vanish. Not now, not ever. Take care, my friend. Until the next story.